My name is Nick Farnell and I teach web design at the University of Guelph in Toronto. In this short tutorial I'm going to show you how to purchase domain name, purchase hosting, and do a manual installation of WordPress. The tools we're going to use is, I'm just going to use a prepaid MasterCard to make the purchases. I'm going to use GoDaddy to buy the name and the hosting. I'm going to use WordPress and download the most recent edition of the core. Then we're going to use Dreamweaver to connect via FTP and actually install WordPress. So to start off, I'm going to create a new GoDaddy account and purchase a new domain name and hosting. So I'm going to head over to GoDaddy and I'm going to create a new account. Email address, username, password, and they ask for a call-in PIN, which you can use if you ever need to troubleshoot with them on the phone. Doesn't like my password. There we go. Okay, so I've created a new account and I'm logged in. There's nothing in my account yet, but what I want to do is purchase a new domain name and new hosting. So in the find a domain box, I'm just going to search for the domain that I want, which in this case is MDST4250, which is the course code of this course. And I'm going to purchase MDST4250. I don't care about privacy protection in this case. I'm going to add that. And I also want to purchase hosting. So I'm just going to buy web hosting. Middle package is good for now. It gives us quite a bit of disk space and room to build our site. And 25 MySQL databases, which we will need some databases as we go forward. Don't need it for a year. I'm only going to get it for 3 months in this case. And I'm only going to buy MDST4250 for 1 year. For this billing info, just add your information. We're in Toronto, Ontario. And I'm going to use a prepaid MasterCard, so this number won't be any good if you're thinking about stealing it. And then we can just continue. So I'm going to place the order. So now we have successfully purchased a domain name and hosting. The next step that we're going to do is look at the back end of our account and see what's available. If you visit your account, you'll notice that you have some extra pieces under domain names here, as well as some extra information under web hosting. If we launch domain names, gives you your domain settings here, and then if you head back to your account, and under web hosting, if you launch that, it starts to set up your domain. So in this case, it's asking us which domain should we use for the website. Remember that we purchased hosting and a domain. In this case, we want to make sure that those two pieces are connected. So we are connecting this hosting account to mdst4250.com. The next step under build, you can install WordPress right from here, but remember that in this tutorial we're going to show the manual installation of WordPress. So we're not going to do that right now. So we're just going to skip the step and skip this step, and then we can go live. So sometimes it only takes a few minutes, but sometimes it does take up to 24 hours. We can finish that for now, and then we can move on to Dreamweaver. So remember that if we do want to use the shortcut of installing WordPress, we can just hit install WordPress and create it that way, but we are going to do the manual installation of WordPress. So now that we've successfully purchased a domain name and hosting, we are going to connect to our server via FTP, and we're going to use Dreamweaver to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is, after I've opened Dreamweaver, I'm going to create a new folder on the desktop, and I'm going to call this MDST4250 just because it's the name of our site. And back in Dreamweaver, I'm going to go Site, New Site. I'm going to call the site MDST4250. I'm going to navigate to the folder that we just created. I'm going to select that, and then next is to add server information. So we don't actually have our server information yet. We're going to have to go back into GoDaddy to do that. So back in the browser, I'm going to go to my account in GoDaddy. I'm going to launch web hosting. And then once it loads, I'm going to click on the files and FTP users. So I haven't set up any new FTP users, but I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to add an FTP user. My username is going to be just my name in this case. Access level is going to be all folders, and then I'm going to create a password. So I'm just going to call this 4250. It asks for some specific criteria. And just so I don't forget, in Notepad, I'm going to copy this down. My username, Nick Farnell in this case, and my password is... So just keep in mind that this is a testing site, so I'm not too worried about sharing my username and password. Otherwise, I would never share that kind of information. Oops, username is unavailable. I guess it's used on another site. So I'll just call this Nick MDST. And that's right, I can't use uppercase letters. There we go. Okay, so now we have a username that works. I'm going to copy that down, and then I'm going to add that user. So right now it's being created. And let's test to see if we can get that started. Server name is just whatever you want to call it. FTP address is usually just your domain name without anything in the front. Username is what I just created, and then password. I'm going to copy and paste this and test it out. It's successfully connected, that's great. So now, that was only a test, now I actually have to save it. So just to recap, server name, create it wherever you want. I'm going to connect using FTP. Another option is SFTP. You can toggle between SFTP and FTP. In this case, we're just going to use FTP. FTP address is just your domain name without anything at the beginning. Username is the one that you just created, and password is the one that you just created in the FTP section of Dreamweaver, or in GoDaddy. We'll save that, and then you can successfully connect to your site. If we open this up and show the local and remote site, everything on the right hand side of the screen is your local site, so this is what's on your computer. Everything on the left hand side is the server, so the files that are on the server. Sometimes there are more folders depending on what kind of a server package you have. In this case there aren't too many. Just to make sure everything is working properly, we're going to right click in here and create a new file. I'm just going to call this test.html. The reason we're doing this is we're just creating a really simple HTML file, uploading it to the server, and then going to the site just to make sure that it uploaded successfully. Double click on it to edit it, and then inside the body we're going to write hello world. This is just our little test page. Make sure that your HTML is in between the two body tags. I'm going to save that, and then back in the folder I'm just going to drag the new file onto the website, onto the server. So it looks like it's successfully uploaded because now we see a copy of it on the server side, but just to make sure we're going to go to the browser and see if we can find that file. So in a new tab, 4250.com is the name of the site, and I'm going to search for test.html and see if we can successfully get to this file. And there we go. So we know it works because that is the file that I created, uploaded it, and we can see it in the browser. So quick recap, we opened Dreamweaver, we created a new site in Dreamweaver, and with that site we connected to the folder we created. We also connected to our server and then successfully uploaded a file to our server. So now that we have a domain name and hosting, and we've connected via FTP in Dreamweaver, we're actually going to download the latest version of WordPress. Keep in mind that there are two different types of WordPress. There is WordPress.com, which is the free blogging site, and then there's WordPress.org, which is the content management system that you can download and install on your server. So that's what we're going to use. Head over to WordPress.com and download the most recent one. Currently on 3.6.1. They update WordPress quite often, so if there's a newer version you can use that one. You actually download a zip file, so we are going to unzip this. I'm just going to extract it to the desktop. And it's unpackaging all of these files. So if I head over to the desktop now, you see a folder called WordPress. So inside this folder there are about a dozen files and then 3 folders, and inside each one of these folders there are quite a few more files. We're going to jump into exactly what those files do in a minute, but for now we're just going to move all of these files into the folder that we created previously when we were connecting to our server in Dreamweaver. One thing to note is don't drag the entire folder into your website folder, because then you'll have an extra level called WordPress. What you're going to do is just move all of the files themselves. Oops. And drag everything into that folder. So when you open your MDST4250 folder, or whatever the name was that you created on your desktop initially, you should see this. You shouldn't see another folder called WordPress, because that will give you a little bit of trouble later on. If we jump back to Dreamweaver, nothing shows right here, but if we refresh it, it was just waiting for that to happen. Now we can grab everything and upload it to the server. Shouldn't take too long to do this, but we're going to pause here and then come back once it's been uploaded. So now everything is finished uploading. All of the WordPress files are on our server. The next step is to start configuring WordPress. So if we go to the browser and type in our URL MDST4250, we'll see an error. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. We know that at least there's some connection to WordPress, because this is a different view than what we saw before. So you can hit this button and create a configuration file. What it needs is a WP config file. So if we just press that, then all you need to do is type in your name, username, password, and host, and you can use the browser to create the WP config file. But we're going to go the more manual way and actually do it inside Dreamweaver and edit that file. So the file you're going to edit is WP config sample. So if you double click to edit, there are a few things that it asks for. So it asks for a database name, a username, password, a host, and then some other pieces, some authority keys and security keys. So first, before any of that, we actually need to create a database. If we go back into GoDaddy and we go and launch our web hosting section, up at the top you'll notice there's an area for databases. You can also get to it down here under MySQL databases. If you click on that, you can add a new database, adding a friendly name, so that's just a name for you to recognize, but also database and username, password, and then just confirming your password. So I've already set up a database. Sometimes they take a little bit, a few minutes to actually get set up. So to save us those few minutes, I've created one and written down the username and password. So if we go back to WordPress, you could do it here. We're going to do it the difficult way. So, not the difficult way, but the longer way, the manual way. The first thing we need is the database name, which is the database name and username that you gave it. Typically the database name and the username are the same. So you want to change the database name inside the brackets. Username in our case is the same. The database password, I'm going to copy and paste. And then your MySQL hostname. Most of the time you won't actually need to change this, but in my case, the specific server setup we have in GoDaddy, you do need to change it. So under hosting details, I'll show you where I got to that. You can either click databases down there, or in databases you can click up here, and if you click on details, it gives you a host name. We're going to copy and paste this and paste it into MySQL hostname. Like I said, most of the time you won't have to change that, but in my case we do need to change that. So I'm going to save this, but I'm not going to save it as WP config sample. I'm going to save as. I'm going to remove the dash sample, so it's just WP config,
setup.php, because that's the file that drives the WordPress installation. It's not showing up here, so I just have to refresh that folder. Now we have the wp config file. If I drag it over to the server side, upload it. So if I've done everything correctly and I go to the root of my site, it should give us the ability to finish off our installation. There we go. Okay, so next we have to just give a little bit of information about the site we want to create. But if you see this, it's successful. The WordPress installation has happened correctly. So the title for this site, I'm just going to call it MDST-4250. Admin is the root username, the default username. You should probably change this. I'm going to change this to my name, my password, and I'm just going to keep a list of passwords as I go. Just so I don't forget them. I'm not getting too crazy with passwords. And then I add my email address. And privacy, if you want your website to show up on search engines, which most likely you do if it's a public site, just leave that clicked. Click install, and then success. So WordPress has successfully been installed on our server, and then we can just log in with the username that we just created and the password that we just created. And we are now in the dashboard section of our website. If we click here to visit the site, this is what the public would see, and this is the default installation of WordPress with the default theme. So we've successfully purchased a domain name, purchased hosting, connected to our server through Dreamweaver, downloaded WordPress, uploaded it to our server, and installed it manually, and here we are. We've successfully created a WordPress site.